Great to see you all. So glad to be with you. We have a wonderful offering today. For our Dharma talk, we're going to have two short talks by teachers who are visiting here from afar. And after they've each given their short talks, they're going to sit together and take questions as a pair. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker. I have a lot of happiness and honor in introducing Christina Moon, a priest in the Rinzai tradition who resides at Chozenji Temple in Honolulu, Hawaii. And
it's pretty cool.
We'd like to remind you that envy is one of the afflictions. So Christina has traveled far to be with us, and we are very grateful. Christina is the author of a wonderful book called 3 Years on the Great Mountain, which is a memoir of training at Chozenji, which is inspiring and illuminating. And it's been really wonderful to have a little time with you while you've been here. So thank you so much, Christina.
Okay. Aloha e kako. My name is Christina Moon, coming from the back of Kalihi Valley in Honolulu, Hawaii. Thank you, Ben, for bringing me in today. And Ben shared the call for today's Peace Walk, but also for from Indigenous leaders yesterday to gather here in Minneapolis. And I was very, very touched and was looking for an opportunity to be able to be out here with everyone. So I'm really grateful that you shared that with me. I just wanted to let you guys know I'm not wearing my rocket suit today because, I really came out here for my own, just representing myself. I'm not here representing my home temple. So I just want to make sure that's sort of clear. All right. Okay. I was wondering whether I should still go with the idea that I had for what I would say today, but I'm going to go for it. I'm going to start with a story, and please just indulge me for a little bit. The story, just to start, focuses on two young men. Two young men, a few years out of college, graduated from University in Seoul, South Korea. The year is 1967. These two young men, maybe a year or so before, had traveled with their family from South Korea, post-war, very poor, really dire circumstances. They'd taken a boat from Korea around the Horn of Africa and eventually landed in South America. South America, it turned out, in the late 60s wasn't that much better than Korea. So they were still experiencing poverty. They had gone on this long sojourn to try to find a better future and a better life, and then they realized, we got to keep going. So their names are Jeduk and Suduk, and they're selling produce in the market in Asuncion, Paraguay. They see an American businessman who's haggling for cigarettes and is having kind of a tough time. So they go up and they're like, maybe we'll give this guy a hand, practice our broken English, and they chat and help him out. And he's so impressed by their pluckiness that he befriends them, befriends the family. And eventually, these two very promising young men, he actually sponsors them to come to the United States. And in 1967, they land in Detroit. Now, if you remember Detroit in 1967, they literally land in the middle of the race riots. They go to ask a lady for directions. She screams and runs away. So they're like, okay, gotta keep going, can't settle here. And they go to the library and I'm assuming they opened up an encyclopedia. They found 3 US cities that satisfied their criteria for okay, we think this might be a better bet. Major city with public transit, with jobs, and a university. And they've got a couple options. They flip a coin, and then they pack their bags for the Twin Cities, for Minneapolis. When they get off the bus, it's super early in the morning. They've got to make calls to apartments, find a place to live, like, for that night. But they have some time, so they take a walk across the Washington Avenue Bridge at the U. And as they're walking, the sun is coming up. People are sort of on their morning walk. And as they pass, they don't scream, they don't run away, they wave, and they smile. Jayduk and Suduk, they take on the American names of Jay and Peter, and then they settle down in the cities, they enroll at the U, and they end up sponsoring the rest of their family, their parents, their younger sister, and their youngest brother, who is my father, Kundak. And at our family reunion a couple of years ago, my Uncle Jay told this story, and he was even more emotional than I am right now. Still, 57 years later, or something like that. Because our family wouldn't be where it is today. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the generosity, the kindness, and the opportunity that our family found here in the cities. My grandparents ended up moving to Georgia at one point. My Uncle Jay went and started a tech company there, and they went to go be with him. But Minneapolis held such a strong place in their hearts that even many years after they'd left, they wanted to be buried here. So the last time I was in Minneapolis was to bury my grandmother at Lakewood Cemetery. When I saw what was happening here to families like mine, side note, my grandparents were actually undocumented. They came on a tourist visa and just overstayed. The kids all enrolled, so they got student visas, but my grandparents were undocumented for something like 20 years. But still, this was a home for them and for us. And so when I saw what was happening here to families like mine, I felt really strongly that I had to find a way to show some support, to offer something. And that's part of why I'm just so grateful to have had this chance, because I also didn't want to parachute in and sort of like impose, make people take care of me when I was here with the goal of taking care of others. But in addition to just, showing my solidarity from very far away, as Ben mentioned, I am a resident priest at a very peculiar Rinzai Zen temple. Peculiar because it's also a martial arts dojo. We have a very physical approach to Zen through the body that mostly focuses on training in the martial and fine arts. And in both of those areas, we are a little barbaric compared to some very refined or very polite martial and fine arts places that you'll find elsewhere. There's a real reverence and appreciation for sort of the earlier warrior era of Japanese Zen. So that's where a lot of our philosophy and our approach to what we call Zen training comes from. I wanted to share with you this one samurai turned Zen priest and Roshi, Suzuki Shosan. He's one of several Zen priests and Roshi who have ties to samurai, who are from samurai families or who were samurai themselves. People like Miyamoto Musashi, Yamako Teshu, Taigo Sakamori, Suzuki Shosan, Hakuin, Takuan Soho. These are all really accomplished Zen people who started out their lives or who came from a calling that was killing people. So they've got a very intense and interesting perspective on Zen that in many ways I feel like is helpful for times like today. to see things a little. And I would just maybe caveat all of this, just asking you to, if there are certain words or certain ideas that feel a little bit out of place or triggering, just take it with a grain of salt, understand where these guys are coming from, and then try to, just translate for where you're at today, what's appropriate. Take what's useful, leave the rest. All right. So we've got some young people at our dojo who are learning to take on different leadership roles. And so this actually came up, Suzuki Shosan came up for me a little while ago. One of our younger sort of leaders was giving a tour, and she was giving a very polite tour, and I was like, no money. Like, come on, you got to give people the right impression of this place. Have you heard of Suzuki Shosan? All right, I'm going to order you this book, because this one's out of print, but you can find it online. It's called Warrior of Zen, The Diamond Hard Wisdom Mind of Suzuki Shosan. It's super good. And then the other day there was a young man, well, I'll leave that story for another time. Okay, so I just have one quote and then some exposition that I'm going to share with you. And I'm just going to read straight from the book. One day the master instructed a certain samurai. From the beginning, it's best to do zazen in the midst of strife and confusion. A samurai in particular must be able to do zazen while uttering his battle cry. Guns are firing, lances are flying, and amidst the confusion, you send up a battle cry. It's here that you can clearly make good use of your practice. What use can you have for the sort of zazen that needs a quiet place? However appealing the Buddha Dharma may be, the samurai should throw out anything he can't use when the moment for his battle cry arrives. So he never needs anything but the mind of the Nyo. Other than this mind of the Nyo, none of the myriad things is of any use to beginners. So just a little bit on what the Nyo are. The Nyo are usually, they're these guardian deities or sort of warrior guardians that are usually represented as statues in Japan. You'd have two sort of flanking the entrance to a Zen temple. They're really fierce looking guys, usually rippling with muscles. And they're doing this sort of Nyo breathing where they've got a fist in one hand and they're pushing down on the other, and they're usually breathing in and then breathing out. So they're very intimidating, but they're an archetype for that sort of energy. They're supposed to ward off sort of bad spirits, people with bad intentions, but also they're supposed to inspire the monks and people who are coming to the temple. Well, okay, that's the kind of approach that I have to training, to my Zen training. On the other side of that is actually where you find peace, compassion, focus no matter the circumstances. But it's in this spirit that Suzuki Shosan is saying, you have to have the mind of the Nyo. So, beginners should not focus on the image of the Tathagata, the enlightened Buddha, for they are not yet able to do Tathagata Zazen. They should simply focus on the Nyo and do Nyo Zazen. Initially think of the Nyo as the entrance to the Buddha Dharma. That's why the Nyo stand at the gate. If you don't acquire this vital energy, you'll succumb to delusion. You need to only apply yourself single-mindedly with a strong spirit. But nowadays the Buddha Dharma has declined and there aren't any good methods. No one makes use of his vital energy. There are only dead people. So Suzuki Shosan is that's the vibe that we need to bring. Don't be a dead person. Great. A little more. The master added, all the arts, including war, are produced with the energy from meditation. The art of war cannot develop if the mind is slack. He then mimicked someone holding a sword at the ready position. This energy of meditation is everything. However, the warrior meditates only when he is performing his duty. As soon as he puts aside his sword, he relaxes his attention. A Buddhist practitioner, on the other hand, always uses this energy, never relaxes it. That's why they are never defeated. They practice gradually building up fervor, and as in no singing or in clapping to a beat, they harmonize with everything and perfect all virtue. That is the kind of activity I call Buddha Dharma. I realized I'm running out of time, and I want Eve to have plenty of time, and we can talk more in Q&A. But I think there's a lot in there that's worth taking inspiration from. There is that feeling, and I think that any of you especially who've done any ice observer training, I'm like guessing that this was probably part of it, that sense of like, ice might come at any moment. You're like chilling, you're relaxing with your family, but you hear the whistle, you pick up yours, you run out the door. You know, there's sort of like no slacking. You don't get to clock out of that job, protecting your family and protecting your community. That's kind of, what he's talking about, that maintaining your attention. And in our Zen practice, in our Zen training, you sort of do this long enough and you start to realize that kind of to really move forward, everything's got to be on the table. You don't get to clock out of your training, out of your practice, and then sort of it becomes life. And then you realize that life is also your practice. Out in the world is your practice, not just when you're on the cushion. And then I also chose that quote because I thought Ben would like it, because he's been talking about protest singing since I got here. So if, we can talk more about what Suzuki Shosan means by war and maybe how to see that in a more palatable way later. But I liked that metaphor too, of singing, harmonizing, perfecting all energies together. I think I read that part right. But it's got to be pretty full-throated, and that's a really interesting way to reflect on what does it mean to live your life that way, to sit zazen that way, like a warrior with the sword at the ready, or like an artist who's not just singing quietly, self-consciously, but putting everything out there. And then using this place as a laboratory for learning how to do that in our bones every moment of the day. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks.
It's on, right? Yes, it hears now.
Okay, I'm going to introduce you. I know you would just jump in. So, hello. Thank you so much, Christina. And we'll have an opportunity to ask questions in a bit so you can hear more. I'd like to introduce our second speaker, Eve Marko. Eve is the head teacher at Green River Zen Center in Massachusetts. And Eve is one of the founders of the Zen Peacemakers order, which has been pioneering in bringing engaged Buddhism to the world, and certainly to the West. And Eve is the author, or co-author of a wonderful book called the Book of Householder Koans that we used for a practice period here for a few years ago. Some of you have encountered her work. She has been instrumental in bringing bearing witness retreats for many years to Auschwitz, to Selma, Alabama, and to the Black Hills. in South Dakota. And it is a tremendous honor for me to have you here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi there. A couple of things. I no longer actively teach in a Green River Zen Center. Other teachers have taken over. And yes, I am one of the first members of the Zen Peacemaker Order, but really the founder of the Zen Peacemakers was Bernie Glassman. And he started it in 1980. I came in 85. I didn't know what to say. So Ben said, well, some people come here and they say why they came here. I said, oh, it's a short talk. I can say that I came here directly because I think I was the one who got in touch with you rather than you. And Ben was so wonderful, and he communicated, and almost at first he said, I'm really overloaded. I have so much to do, and then he kept on communicating. You see, and I said, I know that resonates, yeah. So. Really, it's because of those efforts and because the people here have been so inspiring. I said, I'm going to come. But you can ask me, what's the real reason you're here? And the answer is, I don't have an idea. I don't know why I came here. And it reminds me, why did I ever come 41 years ago to what was then the Zen community of New York, which became the Zen Peacemakers. And I can tell you the story of it. I can tell you that there was a friend of mine, and he said, well, come, let's go check this out in Riverdale. I said, I don't want to. And he said, oh, come on. I had the flu. I said, oh, come on, let's go. I'll take you. That was the big thing. If he didn't say take me, I wouldn't have shown up. And they're sitting tonight. Okay, I'm going to sit. So went, and guess what? They weren't sitting that night, which annoyed me right away. And then they had a big meeting in their dining room, which was then huge. They were at the Grayston Mansion. That's a whole other story. And they were having a community meeting instead. So we kind of went in, sat down unobtrusively, and what they were talking about is what the vision was. That's what we had come for. And the vision was, we're going to move to Yonkers, 3 miles north, a very kind of poor area, just full of crack at that point, a big crack epidemic. And we're going to live there, and we're going to have this bakery, and then we're going to bring people from the street, and we're going to hire them. And then we're starting with serving monthly lunches at the sharing community or homeless shelter, but then we're going to build permanent housing for families with no homes, and there's going to be a child care center, and on and on. That was before AIDS, so later there was an AIDS center too, but that wasn't part of the original vision. And they go on and on. I'm listening, Some people say they started sitting somewhere because they just saw this teacher and they said, that's my teacher. That was not true for me. I thought he was bloody arrogant. So I kind of said, despite him, I said, you know what I said? I said, this is for me. That's it. This is for me. Now you can say, why? I don't know. Why is it that my friend Walter, the Jungian analyst who brought me there, came a few times, and then decided it wasn't for him and went to Rochester to train? And why did I say that very first evening, this is for me? Now, every Zen center now has lots of therapists, right? And a therapist would say, oh, well, Eve, given your roots, and you had parents in concentration camps in Europe, and you had this, and there was war, and you had this, and you were immigrants, and all that, and there's so much struggle and poverty. Of course you would resonate with that. Well, we do that because we have to explain things. We have to explain things, right? Who knows? Really? I have no idea why that evening it was 2 hours away from my home. For 2 years, that's what I had to do. Why? I have no idea. I don't know. And that's come up for me a lot. As some of you may know, the Zen Peacemakers has 3 tenets: not knowing, which means letting go of fixed ideas, period. And bearing witness, and loving action, or the action that comes out of not knowing and bearing witness. And I've been noticing lately, I've heard over the years so many people talk about not knowing. And usually they say it as a way of ignorance. I'm just ignorant about this or that. Or they say, 10 days ago, the big Zen Peacemakers website had a presentation by 2 people from the Denver Zen Center who actually were able to go into an ICE facility to meet with the people detained there as chaplains. And so they talked about that. And again, you hear this, well, they ship them out to Louisiana and Texas right away, or they, from day to day. And the guy in the cameras was by Zoom says, I don't know, and he kept on saying, so we're in not knowing, with this kind of rueful smile, or like a grimace. We're in not knowing, we're good members of the Peacemaker Order, but do we like it? No. It's a real grimace, we're in not knowing. And when I'm watching them, I feel like saying, I didn't say this, but I feel like saying, hey, guys, don't say that with a grimace. Do you understand what gates have opened up for you out of not knowing? The greatest things in life are from not knowing. Where do you think love comes from? What sense does love make, huh? Makes no sense. And what sense does empathy make? Why? Why am I talking with a Uber driver who brought us here? And he's talking to, and his name is Salim, I think. Yeah, Salim. And he tells me that where he came from and what he does and his family and how they are. And I'm thinking, well, I come from a highly Orthodox Jewish family with rabbis and Hasidic rabbis in our lineage, and I was born in Israel and spent the first 7 years of my life there, and why do I feel for a guy called Salim? What sense does that make? Makes no sense. And that's not knowing. Not knowing isn't just a negation. I know that's part of the training. When you sit, you're letting go, thoughts come up, you let them go, thoughts come up, the factory keeps on working, you do what you do. But you know what happens when that kind of, what I call the land of reason, lore, when lore, it suspends its rules, or you kind of help it, that's our practice. Daily practice, suspend the rules. And what comes up? The most irrational things come up. Empathy comes up. Imagination comes up. Or you think that's from lore? Forget it. Land of reason, that's not where imagination comes up. It's not where art comes up. It's not where all those beautiful things come up. They're not absolutely necessary for our survival. We don't, That's what not knowing is. Yeah. I was laughing. Where's Ken? Daigu. Hi. So Daigo and I were laughing because we both brought the same book here, of all things, Marcus Aurelius's Meditations. Why? I don't know. I can't speak for this guy. I do not know why I brought that book. But there was something that he wrote there that was so moving to me, if I can just recapture it. It said something like, take refuge in the back roads to yourself. Take refuge in the back roads to yourself. Isn't that beautiful? What are these back roads? It wasn't this, well, he was a Stoic. He had the philosophy. In his time, philosophy was different from what it is now. But what are these back roads? More and more opening that up, opening that up, opening that up. And your life gets so much richer, so much more joyful, because it's so big. I want you had to have time to ask Christina questions. Bernie used to say, nothing wrong with being self-serving. It all depends on how you define the self. Pretty simple. And you can always tell. I don't know anybody here. I don't know your titles. I know you have different color roxus, but they're different from mine. So I don't even know what they mean. I don't know who's ordained because you're not wearing cases. I don't know anything. But you know how I'll know? Because of what you do. And he said, if your sense of self is just you, you're going to end up just serving yourself. It's very simple. If your sense of self is your family, guess what you're going to be serving? Your family. If it's the community, if it's people of your religion or your sect, your nationality, guess who you're going to be serving? But if it's a bigger self, that's what you're going to be serving. He says, I don't care, he says, what your names are or your titles or anything. It just stands right out there. That's what it is. And I was talking to my friend Michelle, who couldn't believe it, was up at 5 in the morning. He is also a wonderful veteran, crazy member of our order, and also a teacher. And he's up sitting, he's exhausted with a painful back. He's sitting at 5 a.m. I turn around, look at him, I think he's nuts. But he says to me, Eve, I sit every morning because that's my opportunity to remind myself again and again of this big self. When I sit, the self expands and expands and expands and expands and expands. And then the rest of the day is serving that self. It's simple. It's really very, very simple. Okay. Now you can ask Christina questions.
I just want to say we're a little short on mics, so we're just going to invite everyone in this room to use your big voice so we can all hear, both everyone in this room and the people online. And I forgot to mention this, the online people, when they speak, you will just hear a voice from on high. So, speakers.
Wow. I'm overwhelmed with feeling about...
Can you please say your name? Because I
can't. Dan Galugos. I'm overwhelmed with remembrance of the summer of 1992. I was at my final months of training to become a Buddhist teacher in the Shambhala tradition, and Ernie made a talk at our assembly and told us a little bit about his history and what the goals are. And I also met a man who was perhaps the last bowman to the Emperor of Japan. And I got some initial boat training. And he left Japan because Shogun Trungpa invited him to the United States. And he felt that this bowman had felt that it was becoming a sport in Japan, which was shameful because it was supposed to be part of your culture. And so he trained us to not take it as a sport. And at one point I remember that after you've released the bow, if you care whether or not it's hit the target, you're a failure as a student. Because you should let go immediately, or you'll just confuse the whole purpose. And his wife was an American, and she taught me some Japanese flower arranging. And before the summer, I had already been a fan of who I feel who was the best director ever in movies. It's Anton Kurosawa. And I have a subscription to Criterion Channel so I can see all the movies and talks by him that I haven't heard before. I love it. I wish I could go back to Japan. I've only been there for a month when my aircraft carrier was docked there for repairs before going back to the United States. Of course, I've been to the Tokyo airport many times. And I didn't get to go to one of his concentration camp visits, but by coincidence, my wife and I ended up in Poland, and we went to Auschwitz. And her family lost a lot of people there because she was Jewish.
I just want to correct you, if I may. Our retreats are retreats there. You literally stay there for 5 days. It's not a visit. Very different.
I have a question. I hope that both of you will answer it. As I study Zen, I feel that I'm getting in touch with this big self that includes everyone and everything. And I feel that there's also a warrior in here, a focused warrior that wants to experience this moment right now. And I don't know how to do both.
You don't do anything. You don't do anything. It does you. You don't do it. You know, I don't know when I woke up one day and taking a shower, I realized that I was looking to see if there's spiders there or ants to get them out, you know. And one day, and I must have been doing it for years, I said, oh, look what happened. You're looking at where, if there are any little crawling things in the shower that you want to get out before you put the, when did that start? You know, I said, oh, I don't know, I must have been doing it, but I wasn't doing it before. It wasn't a decision I made. It wasn't like, oh, look at those sweet little critters. And, you know, it wasn't anything like that. It did, something happens. You do it, and then, oh, look at that. I gotta get that out before I put the shower on. Or look at that person who's homeless. Or look at the person being taken into a... It does you. It is true that in the beginning we kind of push things and we read books. You know, we learn from what the Dalai Lama said and all this, and it's important. And you have a teacher who writes great books. And in the end, basically, my experience is it does you.
That's a very Zen answer. Do nothing. Don't do anything.
I didn't say do nothing.
approaching Zen, and historically, like they come in different cultural and sort of containers of like time. So I named a couple of writers out there, teachers out there who have books. They just happen to have been dead for a couple of 100 years, but they very much understood and were the warrior inside and brought that energy, that vitality into their Zen training, their Zen practice, to break through that wall of separation that keeps them thinking in delusion that there's a self that's not the universe. So Suzuki Shosan's guidance is like use that energy, find ways to harness that energy, that feeling, to be just like deadly serious about your practice. And I think, but this is also like why we're really weird compared to a lot of American Zen. It's a product of place and time and who our founders were. But generally we say, for everyone, but really especially for people under 40 who are coming to train with us, like, especially if you're under 30, but under 40 you can. That's the time to just push your body. Find out like where your limit is, and then go past it. And then realize that most of the limits that you perceive on yourself that are self-imposed are actually only self-imposed. And that's the energy you can bring to that essentially.
Thank you.
We have some like practical ways of doing that, which is like you don't move during the sitting. It's very strict. People do martial arts and stuff like that. So those are some other options.
I am profoundly grateful for your visit and both of you talking. I came this morning, right up until the talk. I hadn't even looked at the program to see who was talking. So I'm sitting there talking about practicalities of this walk this afternoon with others and okesas and all of that. And I had no idea that people from out of town were coming. So I was just astounded when I heard that you were talking. And I think it is just immensely courageous to be willing to speak when you've not been given like any notice at all. I know so many people who would just politely decline and not do it, and just thank you. Thank you so much, both of you, for being here.
Hi, I'm Ken Daigu. I am not one of the speakers, as I mentioned, someone who asked me. I'm not even a good listener, but I'm up from the Zen Life and Meditation Center in Oak Park. And this weekend, I met Eve for the first time, but I've known her for years. My story really goes to the not knowing, bearing witness, and what comes next. But I was, about 5 years ago, a disgruntled Jew. I know it's unique, but we're seekers and searchers is another way of saying it. I was in a comparative religion class with my synagogue during COVID, and Jun Ryushin Tanoye, who's now my Roshi, was speaking, and I was reading the book Bearing Witness at the time by Bernie Glassman, edited by Eve Marko, and learning about the Bearing Witness retreat. And I can tell you it made no sense. But during the time that I heard my Roshi speak, I said, oh, this is easy. My next step is I'm going to become a member, I'm going to become a student, and I'm going to Auschwitz. And in 2023, I did. And the same thing happened. In our Zendo, we always ask the question, when is it time for compassionate action, a rise in compassionate action. And I can tell you for the first time, coming up here this weekend, it was not a big voice, it was not a revelation, it would make bad cinema. But it was a very quiet voice, you're heading up. And I had no idea, I'm not a Zen teacher, I'm not a priest, but I thought, I'll drive people around and make food and cook food. So I just want to thank you guys for being hungry and, and just remembering, bear witness, and then the compassionate action, you'll know. You just let it happen. Thank you.
Just a thought on that. The abbot of our temple grew up in the Catholic Church, and so he really likes to emphasize the definition or understanding of compassion from the Latin. Calm meaning with, and passion, being a reference, passion being suffering, as in like the passion of the Christ. So compassion is to suffer with. It's not empathy to just feel what other people are feeling. It's not sympathy, which is to like have your heart moved by what other people are experiencing. It's being willing to go and actually suffer with people, sharing their suffering. And I think that's why the whole world is watching you. Not just Renee Good, not just Alex Preddy, but all of you who are putting your bodies in between immigration enforcement actions and your neighbors, your community, with the realization that, certain privileges that maybe you've experienced in your life don't really count for that much anymore. Not in this situation right now, with the occupation as it is. But that courage, coming from not knowing and being willing to suffer with your neighbors, I think that's the thing that's inspiring so many.
And we have a service. I guess many people think of it as a kanroman. It was translated by Bernie and a few others, to the Gate of Sweet Nectar. So we make vows, and the page of vows starts, attention, raising the Bodhi mind. The supreme meal is offered to all the hungry spirits in the 10 directions, from the smallest to the largest space. All you hungry spirits, please gather here, sharing your distress. I offer you this food, hoping it will relieve your thirst and hungers. Sharing your distress is this food that we're offering. And the supreme meal is your life and my life. We're cooking the supreme meal.
We have some online. Paula, if you could unmute.
Good morning. Thank you for being here today.
We're not hearing this in the room. Whoever is running the technology, you'll need to turn on the speakers in the room.
Oh, okay.
Speakers are on, they're not talking loud enough, excuse me. So it's not loud enough.
Can you hear me now?
We're not hearing you.
Oh, okay.
Paula, can you try again and just talk real loud?
Okay, I'll talk real loud. So thank you for your speech. Can you hear me? A little bit? No? Oh.
I think maybe we should just come back to the room, and if we hear someone, we will hear them.
Yeah.
I guess I'm inspired by what Eve just said, too, because
I guess I focus on the other side. When I hear you share that about the divine,
Supreme meal.
supreme meal, that, we can often be fixated on and try to, like, aspire to, or we're shooting for, like, what is the big, like, romantic, amazing thing that we can do? What is this enlightenment that's so esoteric and, like, out there? But it's, there's a lot in Zen that's like the true sage, the true Zen master, like, you can't tell whether they're a sage or a fool. There's a return to, like, a childlike, rudimentary mind. And there's something about the coming back to, again, the things that are really simple and humble and, like, close to the earth, and just feed people. Just keep their feet warm. Just patch up their wounds. And, like, that is simultaneously so humble and also the supreme.
Yep, my friend Michelle, who you know, he was the first successor of Peter Matheson. And so this morning I asked him, do you dream, do you have a dream about Peter? And he says, yeah, I dream about it a few times. I say, it's always the same dream. I say, what is it? He says, I find Peter and I say, Peter, is this is it? This is it? And Peter is very, oh boy, says, I'm afraid so.
Yeah. That feels about right. Any other questions?
I'm kind of curious, I guess you were kind of saying, you were talking about not knowing and how sometimes people kind of like say that as like ignorance of things. And I'm just curious, like, if there's like, I guess, a difference between like willful ignorance and then just not knowing, I guess, like that principle.
Yeah. I mean, you know that here. There's some people who, they don't want to look, they don't want to hear, we read the papers, that's all we need to do. That's not seeing, that's not hearing, that's not presence. Yeah, so willful ignorance is, and I tell you, believe me, your logic will come back. You have not lost it forever. Don't worry. I tell people, I always use this mudra. It's like, I'm not telling you to forget all your opinions and ideas. Just hold them loosely. You don't have to know that. You can just, like this. So it'll be there. Don't worry, it's not leaving. You'll know how to find your way home. It's just hold it loosely. And then see what else comes in.
Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense, because also I feel like for me,
Not the good answer.
well, for me, I struggle a lot with, like, I have a really hard time balancing, like, either just wanting to, like, ignore things or just wanting, like, getting stuck in, like, the total, like, I want to control everything, I want to, like, know everything that's happening, and then, like, things other people don't know, I get super frustrated with them about, and then, like, it goes into just turning it all off, and it's like, well, forget it, I can't know everything. So I guess maybe what I'm getting from this is it's about, like, a balance.
Yeah, you don't have to turn it off. I mean, it's who you are. It's great. Really enjoy who you are, really. All I'm saying is, it's not what I thought. All right. Yeah.
There's this principle more in Japanese culture. Oh, I'm sorry, actually, Chinese and Japanese, sort of more Taoist, of Mu-Yi non-action. when one has developed themselves, the things that need to get done. But it isn't through stressing over it, micromanaging it, making it happen. There are great stories about people that sort of like made that happen in really spooky and sometimes annoying ways. There's a really good story, like one of the former premiers in Japan after the war, came into work every day, sat at his desk, read the paper, seemed to be all he did. And his deputy was the one who was like dispatching stuff, making stuff happen all the time. And he got really resentful of the premier and was like, this guy, like, how does this guy have this position? He doesn't do anything. Right? And then one day that guy's out of the office for a couple of hours. And the deputy is doing his thing, and everything starts falling apart. And then the premier comes back and is working again. And all he's doing is sitting at his desk reading the paper. That was like told to Trevor Leggett, the BBC sort of bureau head for Japan for a really long time, as an example of a principle called ki, which ki is like your chi, your vital energy. Ki is like the subtlest form that can take that's perceivable. So you can think in Hawaii we call it mana. It's like your presence. It's like a vibe. It's your feeling. It's your wrist. And so, but you get that. Basically, you get to that place because of not by doing anything, but because of who you are. That you've trained yourself, you've refined, you've honed and forged yourself to the point that that's just the vibration that you come into the room with. So you're not having to go from, I gotta handle everything versus forget it. It's just, there's like less of you in the way. This needs to get done, it'll get, like, I'll do it or it'll get done. And then creating that feeling so it can be shared, so everyone can feel it all around you. But that sounds like that's your karma to figure out.
My dear friends, we're so thankful that you come here and offer your wisdom and your presence. And we will be turning it over to our donor for announcements. Do you want to say anything more? Feel good?
Just keep doing what you're doing. Onward. Greg, and thank you for your inspiration. I mean that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Many thanks to our speakers and for the conversation today. And now for some announcements. MCMC is an entirely donation-based